Welcome to the Nejah Chuan Podcast. My name is Isaac Kamens. This is a bi-weekly podcast where my friend Jess O'Brien and I discuss internal martial arts, Qigong, and meditation. We continue our discussion on T.T. Liang. First, we discuss a little more about his philosophy of stealing my art. Then we discuss a little bit about T.T. Liang's early life, including meeting Yang Cheng Fu and training with Chen Manqing, as well as his life as a customs officer in Shanghai during the 1930s. We close with a long discussion of T.T. Liang's views on pushing hands, and we got a couple more episodes of T.T. Liang, then we will begin season 4. So thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for all your support. Take care of yourselves and be well.
Today we're going to pick up where we left off, talking about the life and times of Tai Chi master T.T. Liang, student of the famous Chen Manqing. So he's telling his approach to martial arts, which we talked about a little last time, and he goes further into the concept of Steal My Art from the book Steal My Art by Stuart Alv Olson, published in 2002. All right, here's the idea. He says, "This is the way Mr. Liang explained it to me. You must be like a bank heist," he told me, "walking into a bank to steal their money. If you look around obsessively to see the money, the guards will become suspicious and they will arrest you. Then you get nothing. If you don't attempt to rob the bank, then, well, you get nothing either. But if you walk into the bank with eyes still and you look for things out of the sides of your eyes, you can see where they keep the valuables and no one will detect your intentions. A good thief is never detective. He never reveals his intent by looking nervously around or acting suspiciously. That is how you've got to get your teacher's art. But as the teacher, my job is to act like a bank guard. I must keep an eye out for thieves. Anyone who looks suspicious, I must interrogate, arrest, or shoot if necessary. I cannot just let the robber take the valuables. If they want it, they must be more clever than me and take it without my knowledge. This is because my art is as valuable as all the money in a bank. I have learned that if you simply give a treasure away to someone, they will not respect it. They'll just fritter it away. To protect the treasure so completely that no one knows it's even there is to be truly selfish. A thief, however, really cherishes his bounty because he had to work so hard to acquire it. So when you steal my art, you must also become a bank guard and really have a good security plan. Make the thieves work really hard for their bounty. Use intimidation to flesh out their real nature. Find good opportunities to test them, even if it makes you look bad. People's real natures come out most clearly in situations of love and money problems. A student's money means nothing. Smiles and compliments mean nothing. Promises and favors mean nothing. All that matters is the knowledge that they will cherish their bounty, and the harder they work to steal your art, the more you ensure their success and skills. It is every teacher's duty to ensure that their students become better than he is, and this can only be accomplished if they are made to work really hard for it. That is why I say work hard, work well, and wait for your allotment. Banks never give away money. I never give away my art." Got it? So that's a little explanation. I like how he says that, the teacher is like the bank guard. He's looking around to make sure that nobody, to make it hard for you to steal. So you have to make them work for it.
The teacher gives you a little bit, you have to take it, do it, make it yours. Then they'll give you the next piece. And it's like if you just kind of sit there expecting that it's going to come without any effort, that's, I think.
Right. I mean, yeah, a normal school environment, you pay, you get taught what you asked for, and then you go on. But like when it comes to Chinese martial arts, there's a little different approach.
Yeah.
So here, Stuart then goes into talking about T.T. Liang's early years. So T.T. Liang's born in 1900, which is the year of the Boxer Rebellion and still Qing Dynasty. So he's literally born before the end of the empire, which is pretty amazing that he made it to, the book's written in 2002. So T.T. Liang's 102 years old at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So quite a unique character. So he ends up studying in Tianjin and going to university. He gets a master's in economics, and he enters the British Maritime Customs Service at age 24. His rank increased quickly, and by the time he was 35, he held the highest position of any Chinese officer. Only one British officer was higher in rank than him. And then he ends up promoted and moved to Shanghai. Shanghai proved to be the worst place for him, even though he acquired great wealth there. The decadence and crime of the city during those days affected him greatly, and in fact, he had no choice but to involve himself with criminal elements, as the mafia demanded it. In Shanghai, there was nothing but vices. In 1945, Liang fell seriously ill and was hospitalized for over 50 days in Shanghai. He suffered from pneumonia, liver infection, severe gonorrhea, acquired from years of drug, alcohol, and sexual abuse. His doctors gave him approximately 2 months to live. In order to save his life, he took up the practice of Tai Chi, and within 6 months had made great strides toward restoring his health. After he was fully recovered, he requested a transfer from the customs service, realizing that all his health problems were created from his wealth and position. In 1948, he was sent to Taiwan, which he saw as a disgrace, but later considered a blessing because Mao's communist regime overtook China a couple years later, and Liang would certainly have been executed or imprisoned had he remained there. He found out later that he was on a list of persons to be executed. Unfortunately, his eldest son and daughter were still in China at the time, and the communists imprisoned, tortured, and interrogated them in an effort to locate their father, events for which he always felt extremely regretful. Mao had moved into northern China so quickly that all of Liang's efforts to retrieve his children failed. So 1949 is the revolution. So in 1948, just like basically minutes beforehand, he's sent to Taiwan and escapes with his life by That's just an absolute miracle in his case. Wow.
Yeah, it's rough.
That's just a total quirk of history that enables him to live to over 100 years old teaching Tai Chi in America, in the Midwest of all places. Man.
It's quite a life.
So in 1962, he moves to the United States. For 6 years, he served as translator for Professor Zheng Ching, his primary Tai Chi teacher at the United Nations in New York. Since that time, he lived and taught in various places throughout the USA, such as Boston, Minnesota, Los Angeles, and eventually New Jersey. So then it says, while serving in the customs service in Shanghai, Liang took up serious study of ballroom dancing, becoming a famous champion dancer there. His expertise in dancing later affected his approach to Tai Chi because he felt performing Tai Chi to music provided the same relaxation that dancing did. His system of dissecting Tai Chi postures into beats became a very consistent and rhythmic manner in which to perform Tai Chi. All his forms soon had the name dance attached to them. Interestingly, his inclusion of dance and music has had a profound effect on all present-day Tai Chitioners, as many have incorporated music into their forms. I don't know about that. I mean, to me, T.T. Liang's incorporation of music is very unique among the Tai Chi styles I've run across.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I know a few people, like Frank does a lot of stuff with music,
but it ain't ballroom dancing music.
No, it ain't ballroom dancing music, that's for sure. And isn't there like a standardized
is there? I don't know.
Music that goes with the 24 form or something where
Wushu Tai Chi?
It's like timed to it or something.
It says here that Liang studied martial arts and Tai Chi with more than 15 teachers. He was fortunate to have been in Taiwan in the 1950s because it was like a golden era for the internal arts, as many of the great teachers from China managed to escape to Taiwan during Mao's takeover. Liang was wealthy and he maintained a very high position within the Republic of China government of Chiang Kai-shek. His wealth afforded him the ability to have so many teachers. And because his rank was so high, teachers sought him out, as it would have been considered a boost to both their careers and school to have him as a member. Because Liang's very high position in British customs, the mafia was very interested in him. He claims to have had 2 bosses in Shanghai, his superior in customs, Commander Livingston, and the most powerful mafia boss in China, Mr. Da Jun. Although it wasn't his choice, working for the mafia was purely a matter of survival. Every morning, Liang would report to his British boss in a building along the Bund. In the early evening, he would then report to Da Jun. During that time, he was earning a salary from the British and the mafia, equaling between 20 and 30,000 pieces of silver each month, not counting the various payoffs from underlings, drug dealers, and smugglers that he would receive. Consequently, Liang became extremely wealthy. Unfortunately, however, he was also very addicted to gambling. And even worse, he was a poor and unskilled gambler. He claims he never won and that he was mostly cheated. One time he lost what he equated to $30,000 in a poker game and couldn't pay the amount immediately. He said the game had been fixed and that he didn't see beforehand their plot. He was held captive until his wife went to her father and quickly sold a house of theirs to pay off the men. If she hadn't paid, they would have killed him. Those men found out later that he was connected to Da Jun and they quickly fled Shanghai. Liang mentioned the incident to Da Zhang, who calmly said, "Not to worry." Within a week, Liang had all his money back, and Da Jun told him, "A blind man should not be a surgeon. You, my friend, should not be a gambler." Liang had a most difficult job in shuffling the concerns of both the British and the mafia. Officially, quotes, closing their eyes, the British let him know that certain ships carrying opium were to be allowed into port without interference. Meanwhile, some of these ships the mafia wanted stopped, and others they wanted in. To not follow either of their orders could have meant demotion or death. Because of these conflicts, Liang endured frequent attempts on his life. He tells a story about when he was standing on a pier with his two personal bodyguards and several soldiers. Their job was to turn back a ship that was reported to be belonging to a gang of smugglers from Hong Kong. As the ship was signaled to turn back, shots rang out. When Liang turned, he saw both his bodyguards lying dead next to him, each shot in the head. He then ordered the ship to be sunk. Sometimes someone would pull up next to his limousine and try to shoot him, but he claims that his ancestors must have been out to protect him because always his bodyguards would get to the assailants first, adding that being his bodyguard was not a good career choice in those days. Tired from all the difficulties with the mafia, Liang eventually requested that his superior transfer him. His transfer back to the port of Amoy, however, was worse than Shanghai because the mafia there was divided into many small gangs, and each sought his obedience.
Uh-oh.
Eventually, he requested another transfer, but his boss thought that the only place he would be free of all the mafia concerns was Taiwan. In those days, being sent to Taiwan, the land of barbarians, was considered an insult, and Liang remembers how mad he was about going there. When Mao swept through China, however, he reconsidered his transfer as being very lucky because he was safe from Mao's thugs and protected from Chiang Kai-shek's regime. In Taiwan, he maintained the same rank and salary as in China. Under Chiang's rule of Taiwan, the government there was considered the legitimate Chinese government. The island was even divided into mini provinces to emulate the mainland. So yeah, that tells you a little bit, like he had to work for both the mafia and the government who were giving him conflicting orders all the time. That's way screwed up.
It's a complicated situation.
I mean, the stress level was so high. Plus, he's doing drugs nonstop and carousing and prostitution. And just like, man, he just captures that moment of the 30s and 40s when the corruption is just absolutely insane on the coast.
Yeah, I mean that's the Roaring 20s, but
right,
Roaring 30s and Shanghai.
Totally. Yeah, and some of the other teachers we've run across in our discussions have also been participants in that time period. That was that great era of the esteeming the martial society and these gathering of internal martial arts groups and stuff at the end of the Qing dynasty through the warlord period and so on, where, you know, coincidentally, these martial arts that we study were being sort of formed and formatted at the same time as this just explosive collapse of government and society, the Japanese invasion, just all, you know, anything that could go wrong was going wrong, basically.
Anybody whose life started somewhere around turn of the century, you know, it was this rolling ball of, you know, war and prosperity and
right.
chaos. I mean, it was, you know, everything you could possibly, like the highs and lows of every sort of,
and just mass starvation, mass political persecution, but massive wealth. If you're on the right side, if you switch sides at just the right time, you could navigate this, you know, but he's following orders from multiple different bosses, just trying to walk this tightrope.
Well, and he was lucky. You know, he was lucky.
It took a miracle to survive.
Well, and that he was wealthy and that he was, you know, he had status. I mean, if you were on the bottom, I mean, it was rough. At least he was able to kind of ride the,
like a lot of wealthy people made it to Taiwan. Once when T.T. Liang was in Beijing, he went to the park outside the Temple of Heaven and saw the famous Tai Chi master Yang Cheng-Fu practicing Tai Chi there with many students. At that time, Liang had little interest in Tai Chi, but he did love martial arts. Liang was amazed, however, at how easily Yang would repel his students into a net that they had constructed between two trees.
Nice.
Yang would throw them into the net from a distance of 15 feet or so. Students lined up just to be thrown, and Yang used them for practice, applying different techniques on each of them. Liang was very impressed and had his aide introduce them. Yang invited Liang to learn Tai Chi from him during his stay in Beijing. He did so, but he claims he did not stay long enough to learn any of Yang's art. His impression of Yang Cheng-Fu was that he was a rude man who smelled, was too fat, but was very tall. Yang had two bad habits, Liang claims, which kept him from reaching his father's and grandfather's level of skill: food and women. He remembers that every day in the park, Yang Cheng-Fu would constantly be eating, and that prostitutes were always close at hand. Cheng-Fu himself worked as a bodyguard in a whorehouse until his uncle and brother retrieved him by force and brought him home.
Nice.
During his final years of his life, Cheng-Fu was so fat that he had to teach from his bed. Liang's Tai Chi teacher in Taiwan, Professor Cheng, was a disciple of Yang Cheng-Fu, related many stories to him about Cheng-Fu and all his unfortunate means of dissipation. Cheng-Fu, it appears, had the means by which to attain really high-level skills, but he was constantly diverted by his passions. Despite all that, however, Liang believes that there was really no one more skilled than Cheng Fu during those days. He was also long considered that if not for young Cheng Fu, seeing his incredible skills and taking up with many of his students in Beijing, he would have never found Tai Chi in Taipei to save his life after becoming so ill.
I mean, that totally sounds like Kumar. Sitting on his butt teaching.
Many great teachers have fallen prey to their own success, including poor Professor Cheng Ching, an alcoholic and his
Yeah. I
life
mean,
cut short early.
I think Liang kind of had a thing of like, he was reformed in a sense. So he lived the life of excess, but came out the other side. And where when he's
Liang, yeah.
looking back at someone like, Yang Cheng Fu, he's like, oh, he couldn't get past his vices. And, I think that there is, something to be said for that like you're eating too much or drinking too much or fucking too much as you get old, that starts to wear on you. And if it's really bad, then it gets in the way of you. I think what he's saying is, it was so bad, his addictions, if you will, were that such that it stopped him from, training and getting to that level that he could potentially have reached.
Okay, now on to a dark period in Master Liang's life.
Wait, you mean the mob after him wasn't the dark period?
No, that's nothing. During the Japanese takeover of China's eastern seaboard, Liang was imprisoned for possessing a 5-pound bag of rice. The Japanese had made it illegal for a Chinese person to possess rice, as it was all to be used by Japanese troops only. Liang had hidden a small bag of rice in his home under his bed. A maidservant had seen it while cleaning his house and turned him in, as there was a reward for doing so. He was arrested and put in jail and remained there for 15 days. What impressed me after hearing all this is that he held no hatred toward the Japanese. After the Japanese surrender and their eviction from Shanghai, a mob had gathered at the pier in order to kill the Japanese troops. It was Liang who went there and was able to stop them, telling the people that it was not up to us to punish the Japanese. They will suffer their own fate, as well as their country. He explained that the atomic bomb had already destroyed the Japanese spirit and had put their evil to rest. Let them go home to their families in shame and defeat. That's the worst punishment we can give them. Besides, it's not these men who started the war, it was their emperor and generals. The killing must stop, and we must rebuild China while Japan is being torn apart by its own evil. The angry crowd dispersed, and the soldiers sailed home to Japan. Liang told me many times that his biggest obstacle in life was hate and revenge, and that he needed to learn how to get rid of them. Many times in his life, he had reason to hate, and somehow he always managed to pass the test. Now we'll move on to T.T. Liang's book, Taiji Chuan for Health and Self-Defense. And we've quoted a bunch from this book. It's really small, but it's quite pithy, and he covers a lot. Published in 1974, so it was one of the early Tai Chi books that was, I think it's probably the best of the early Tai Chi books because it's so detailed and, just boiled down. So he discussed the pushing hand song, and then he has further commentary where he continues and discusses beyond just the words of the song. So he says, T.T. Liang's further commentary on push hands. He says, one adheres to the opponent and issues energy. One adheres gently to the opponent, feeling his strong and weak points. Then, before issuing energy, one must know the opponent's center of gravity and the most effective line in which to attack him. One must not be double-weighted, but must relax and concentrate all energy in one direction. If these conditions are not met, then one will make a blind push, which cannot be effective. Before issuing energy, one must have all these principles clearly in mind. This sounds a lot like the rest of the Pushing Hands song. But I think he's teaching the idea of first you adhere, then you sort of get the effective line and the angle, and then you concentrate all your energy in one direction. I think maybe all martial arts seek to do that, but Tai Chi does have that focus on adherence so that it's not like a punching martial art where you're trying to just hit a point on the person. You want to adhere as you switch the angle and then let loose with all your energy on one line.
So that's the basic pattern for any thing from the moment of contact to you sending the thing back at the person, right? But the whole thing is in push hands, you're trying to do that without letting go or the pushing, right? So this is the don't push, don't pull thing, right? That you're trying to do this while sticking to the other person, right? Without pulling away from them or shoving
And
you
that's kind of the
forward.
first thing you learn in push hands is how to stay without pushing or pulling, stay connected. So, okay, so now he goes on to talk more about some similar concepts. So here's the phrase: adhere, join, stick, and follow with no letting go and no resistance. So that's a real Tai Chi slogan right there. I'm sure it probably rhymes in Chinese. So he says adhere means to lift and pull up so the opponent's heels leave the ground and he is uprooted. His stance floats unsteadily. To join means to give up oneself and not leave the other. That is, to forget the self and follow the other. Stick to means to struggle to remain attached, not allowing the opponent to separate himself and escape. Follow means that when the opponent moves away, one must adapt to the movement, following his movements in any situation. So all these techniques involve not letting go and not resisting. So yeah, I mean, each of those is pretty similar. They're not that different, but he does differentiate them in the sense that you try to get them up, you got to get them to float a little bit, and then you stick to them by forgetting about yourself, and then join with them. So as they try to get away, you stay with them, and then you follow. Even if they try to walk away, you follow and walk towards them. And that's again going back to the key Tai Chi skills of connecting and not using, it really taking advantage of the other person's energy. I think any martial art, you want to use the opponent's energy against them, but Tai Chi takes that to an insane extreme. And so say you were doing push hands with somebody and they were big, strong, and stiff, and you're having a hard time getting that subtlety. What would you do? And it's like, what would you suggest when you're up against someone bigger than you in push hands who's hard to move?
Talking about trying to move them, or what do you do if they're trying to move
Yeah.
you? Because
You trying to win push hands against someone who's bigger and
well, if you're
stronger.
trying to move them, it's real simple. Doesn't matter how big somebody is, their ankle joint's not that big.
Huh.
So you have to get the pressure of your push to go into the weakest part of their body, right? So this ability to adhere to the person is more than just sticking to them. It's the ability to actually feel where that pressure goes.
So here's another one from TT. He says, when one has been struck and is just about to fall over, he must hop like a sparrow. Huh. At the moment one is facing an opponent, one may find oneself in an inferior position, which one cannot avoid. If one should be in such a situation, one's mind must not become confused and flustered. When one is just about to be struck and there's no time to avoid it, one must imitate the hopping of a sparrow. Both feet leave the ground simultaneously and jump away at once to prevent a fall. After this jumping, the body is not scattered, but still acts as a unit, and the mind and spirit are not confused. If the opponent continues to attack in advance, the situation can be dealt with in a calm and unruffled manner. Never heard that one before, but
But you do it all the time.
I guess so. Yeah, you either fall
You do
down
it all,
or you shuffle your feet to sort of
right.
hop away.
It's that moment where you can feel that they've got you, and rather than let your shoulders get pushed back, you bounce. You sort of Bruce would always say, "Hop like a bunny rabbit," right? You
Mm-hmm.
use the pressure that they've laid on you rather than trying to fight it. You just bounce and you spring away from the other person. It gives you a couple of feet to reset, and then, like he says, if they keep coming, you've reestablished yourself. So you're getting pushed as one unit, right? Like if you think about your body as three pieces, the top, the middle, and the bottom, when that push hits you, like say in your chest, right? Rather than letting your shoulders go back and your belly go forward and you kind of lose your balance, right? You just bounce everything so that you stay as all three of those pieces stay, vertically aligned, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this gives you, again, like he says, it gives you this thing that when you land, you're able to do something rather than you land and fall over.
Right. And I
This
think
is
part of push hands is like if you get thrown back like that over and over, you learn how it helps you start to develop the ability to know when you're losing your balance. And instead of fighting it and sort of making it all messy, you just let there be a smooth ending when
yeah.
someone's better than you.
And
And
it's
then
why
then
it's
maybe the third or fourth time you're able to wiggle out of it a little or
right.
shift yourself slightly
Yeah.
or you let yourself lose a few times and then you start figuring it out.
But it's why if you like people see this
It
happening, and
looks
they
really lame. Yeah.
looks like the person's being pushed a lot more than they are, essentially, right?
Right.
Because it's not really the person pushing that's doing it, it's the person
Right.
responding and
You're
bouncing.
adding a lot of your own energy
Yeah,
to
yeah.
it.
It's like again, I mean, I just use the ball analogy, right? This is the idea that you're the ball and they've whacked you, and you can either try to like not go anywhere, which is going to mean you take all of that impact, or you can just bounce and stay as a unit and bounce yourself till you get wherever you land, and then you can bounce back. In Shingy, this is the half step. The person hits your arm, you don't stand there and stiff arm them. You just take a half step back, they kind of fall into that space, then you take a half step forward. But it's not letting them in, it's just moving with them and bouncing your whole body back, right? um
Yeah, there's some
this is that
subtlety there.
anything where you're going to your back leg and it's springing off to your front leg, essentially, right? That's kind of that boing boing, that feeling of you can do it as an offensive thing too, where the punch comes and you just spring yourself back, pull the person down, and then you spring forward and whack them. So it's that you can essentially hop, bounce, whatever you want to call it, um, and maintain your structure rather than kind of lose that integrity of being vertically aligned.
Yep. Yeah. The integrity is a good word, because that bouncing allows you to keep all your structure and integrity instead of just like fighting to the bitter end and collapsing and crunching. I don't know. It's a good way to invest in loss, as they say in Tai Chi. And
Yeah.
but it does look it's sort of like Aikido. It looks hella cooperative. So you're just sort of like to someone from the outside, it might look sort of like a waste of time, but it's a good way to build up your ability to feel, basically.
One of the best examples of this is you watch the judo guy, Mifune, who was Kano's student, little tiny guy. He does it amazingly well, right? Every time somebody tries to throw him, the little dude just kind of bounce, like hop, and he'll be, 3-4 feet up in
Springs his
the
way
air.
out of there.
Well, he's totally, he's up in the air. Somebody's trying to throw him around, they're trying to swing him around or something, and he's just perfectly vertical, and then he lands right on his feet, perfectly straight, and then and the other guy goes flying. So it's that thing of if you can maintain that vertical stick, the whole while you're in the air and you land. When you land, you don't wobble. That's really the big thing of it, is that you're able to root yourself while you're in the air, essentially, and then stay connected. And that's one of the things you very early on in push hands realize, is that if you can kind of it's not give up, but if you can let go of the urge to fight the person and just let them push you, a lot less happens to you than if you, like you say, if you try to like fight it out, then if you try to fight it out, that's when you get knocked over. Right? If you just bounce away, it's like, no big, like,
Yeah, it's a Tai Chi learning skill that you use to, just like again, like Aikido, you learn the skill of taking the falls. Like,
yeah, exactly. I was
it's
just
not
gonna
like
say,
you're trying to win every time. You got to learn how to lose, and that's a lesson that is big in Tai Chi.
being pushed backwards is in Tai Chi is the back fall in judo. Like, somebody trips you and throws you
Yeah,
back on your back.
right.
It's the same thing. It's like they're coming forward and you're just relaxing and going, okay, I'm going to eat it. And you go,
Yeah,
boom, and you fall on your back. But because
yeah.
you anticipated a little bit, you're in control of that.
Right. You got your structure, you got your shape. You're not just breaking apart and collapsing.
Right.
You're staying with it.
Well, it's you fall instead of get thrown, right?
Right.
So in this, it's you hop instead of get pushed, right? I mean,
Right. Your agency remains intact. You're
yeah,
still able to
you
function.
still lost,
You're not
right?
helpless, right? But yeah,
But
but you still
but
lost.
you
So fair
lost.
enough.
The way Bruce described it is you retreat with a tactical advantage, right? So the idea is that hopefully that when you bounce back and you land in a better position than you were in when you started, right? So
And
that
now you can go back.
yeah, so that when you come back, you'll actually win on the second round, right? Rather than eat it and lose
You're
on the
setting
first.
yourself up for long-term success,
Yeah,
and there's some battles on the way before you win the war,
because
basically.
really, I mean, um, that's what push hands is about, right? It's not about trying to win each time you do it.
Yeah.
It's about what's the shittiest position I can put myself into when someone's pushing on me and still, get out of it using Tai
Work
Chi.
from there. Work on your weaknesses. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
it's
Tai
not,
Chi philosophy.
that's where the development comes in doing that.
And that's why all these books are filled with advice about it. And it was mysterious then, and it's mysterious now. It's
Right.
not
Well,
necessarily easy to learn.
That phrase investing in loss, right? Like, what does that really mean? It means that, again, you're going to just say, okay, I lost this round. So rather than, get and try to hold my ground, I'm just going to like bounce, take a couple take a step back, do whatever,
And then come back stronger.
and then come back with everything intact as, a unit rather than, if you think about it as armies, right? It's like you got to regroup and then attack on a better flank or whatever,
Definitely. All right. Well, great catching up. Let's
man.
keep going on TT next time.
Sounds good. Hey folks, thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Just a quick reminder, check out the Instagram for images to go along with the episode. Check out our Patreon for extended and bonus episodes. Next season, we're going to have ads in the regular episodes. So if you want to listen without ads and get all the bonus content and extended episodes and all that, it's a good time to join the Patreon. It's $5 a month for the regular subscription and $10 for the premium subscription. All right. Thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves and be well.